tell me about, what was Bonita like when you first moved here in the 70s?
Bonita Road was a 2-lane road. And of course, most of the houses weren't here. There was a lot of agriculture in the old days, and the houses were far apart, and it was very rural. There was a drive-in dairy right at the very foot of Bonita Road, right near 805 now.
Which dairy was that called? What was the name of the dairy? Do you remember?
No, but I know what Bud Wilson's dairy, which was at the corner where Vaughn's is.
Uh-huh.
And that was few acres.
Yes.
Dairy.
Yes.
And I don't remember the name of the little drive-up farm that was there, right? Of course, 805 wasn't there, but about where 805 is. And you could just drive in and get milk and cottage cheese and different things that they had to sell. And that was always kind of nice because it was all fresh, good stuff. And where Bonnie Brae Shopping Center was a lot of gardening, and just under the San Miguel Bonita Road Bridge was Farmer John's, and he grew lots of produce, lots of corn, and so it was more country.
All the way in the 70s, it was still rural.
Yeah.
And so when you moved here, you were working with Corky McMillan, is that right?
Yes.
And you were doing development?
Well, I originally worked for a bank, and then left the bank and ended up here, which was a lucky break for me because Corky and his family were wonderful people. Very honest, and he wanted to build a subdivision here. And so we bought the little produce place at the corner of Bonita Road and Central Avenue, and we built Bonnie Brae Shopping Center. Bonnie Brae was a name that the then fire chief wanted to use because back in the day, Sweetwater River was running most of the time, and so people that wanted to cross there would cross on his little ferry boat or little, that he would, and charge, I think, 50 cents for animals and maybe $1 for people, and would get people across the river. So it was just more gentle times, and I think more, I don't know, neighborly in a way. Everybody kind of knew everybody.
So it was much smaller.
Much smaller.
So in the 70s is really when
it started really to go.
Yeah.
And Corky built Bonita Glen subdivision, and about the same time we started building Bonnie Brae Crossing. And Bonnie Brae was, as I said, the name of that towboat that he used to run across there.
So the boat name was Bonnie Brae.
And it was a Scottish guy who ran it. And everything was Bonnie Brae, which is beautiful and nice and kind of name. And so the fire chief then wanted us to name that shopping center, not Bonita Shopping Center or one of those, because there's a bunch of those. They were more interested in trying to keep that rural feeling going. So the design there, Hans and Harry, by the way, was one of the first tenants in the Bonnie Brae Shopping Center.
That long ago. They've been there forever.
Yes. They were original tenant.
Wow.
And a number of others. Bank of America had a branch there. And Bonnie Brae Crossing kind of became a landmark place. So that's how that got that name, and the history behind that was that whole toll road, if you want it, toll bridge, toll crossing.
So when you moved here, what kind of community organizations did you get involved in?
I sold all the houses for Corky McMillan. And we first built Bonita Glen, which is 225 houses.
Yeah.
And the old timers here really didn't want that to happen.
Right.
But all the lots are a minimum half acre, and a lot of them had to be 15,000 square feet, which is, good size. 10,000 square foot lots are typical in subdivisions, but they wanted to keep it rural, and that's why the architectural design of that shopping center, and we had hitching posts for horseback riders that used to use that regularly. There were no stoplights when we came to Bonita.
Really?
No, you drove right straight out Bonita Road all the way to San Miguel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both schools were here. Sunnyside School and L.B. Allen was here, and I forgot what the name of that school was now. But at any rate, the schools were wonderful. The teachers were been here a long time. Principals were good. And so Corky built those houses and we sold them. The average price was probably $36,000.
Yeah. In the 70s.
Now they sell for 1.2 million.
Yeah.
So, and of course, as you start to developing, we built the post office. The postmaster was very anxious to get out of where he was down at the little Bonita Center down there by the old Bonita store.
Yeah.
And so he and I worked together, and I bid on the contract, and we built the post office. That's my grandfather's stuff that's up on the wall in that post office from his little farm.
Yeah.
So it was a labor of love, really.
Yeah, and that post office opened in the 70s, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I have some things in my archive about that.
Yeah. My sister painted all of the, I'm going to say, kind of Western font of writing it on the address, and all the stuff used to be very Western. I was disappointed that the museum and the library that are here now, but you look at the fire station, we tried to keep that rural.
Yeah.
But the other architects in the county didn't have the same commitment.
Yeah, to rural feeling.
Yeah. But it's been a wonderful place to raise your family and grow up. Now, we got involved with the toll road.
Oh, the 125.
125.
Yeah.
And they promised that the first off-ramp would be free. And they didn't build it that way.
Oh.
And that's a whole nother story about the history of the toll road.
Yeah.
But the first off-ramp, they didn't finish on purpose. They made an on-ramp and an off-ramp, one on each side, but you couldn't get on and go north. You could go south. It was just, and I think on purpose, because it's a long stretch from there to the 54, and they didn't want that to be free. So now all those people that want to avoid the toll drive through Bonita to get to East Lake.
Yeah.
And we've argued about that with the city, and the Sandag ended up buying it. But they bought it out of bankruptcy. And
The toll road?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
You want to know the history of that real quick?
Yeah.
So originally it was planned by Americans in probably the 60s. And they, for 10 years, the Americans and whoever was developing in those days broke their pick trying to get through all of the hoops that had to be accomplished. So they ended up selling it to the French. So the French took over the whole notion of building the first and only toll road in San Diego County.
Yeah.
They worked on it for a bunch of years and decided it's too hard. And that's on a lease from Caltrans. And it was a 25-year lease. But when they sold it to the Australians, who used Australian Wall Street money to build it, with the idea that that would generate enough revenues to pay back $850 million. And learned very quickly that there's no way it will produce that kind of revenue. So they filed bankruptcy, and Sandag, San Diego County, bought it out of bankruptcy for $350 million.
Wow.
So the Australians lost $500 million
Wow.
on that whole deal. And today it's responsible for so much of our traffic
Yeah, because I don't take the toll road. I drive around.
Yeah.
Because I don't go there very often. So
Yeah.
I don't want to get a toll thing.
No.
Yeah.
So, yep, all that growth. And then we started the Highlands, McMillan. That was 625 houses.
Mm-hmm.
And when we finished that, probably the highest price was in the high 70s, low 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But that changed Bonita too, because between those two, we ended up with about 14,000 people in our fire district.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it puts a strain on the
So
infrastructure.
no, because as we started all that development, we had to contribute to
the property taxes
and yeah, so that was allowed, and it's collected in your property tax. And there's a part of the tax bill is for the fire department,
right,
and that's where they get most of their money.
Yeah.
Originally, it was a volunteer department, and you had to subscribe to it. So when the bell rang, they'd look in the book and see if you'd subscribed and paid your dues. If you hadn't, they would let it burn, but they couldn't do that. And they realized pretty soon that they needed to form a district.
Yeah.
And it's about 6 square miles.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small district, but it's financially very sound.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a number of attempts to try to absorb us in bigger districts that we butt up to.
Yeah, because Heartland is Lemon Grove. I know Spring Valley and Lemon was a Heartland fire.
Heartland, and they dispatched us for a long time.
Oh.
And still do.
Uh-huh.
But they also dispatched a number of others, including Chula Vista and things. They said, no, we want to dispatch our own. National City, well, we want to dispatch our own. And so they withdrew from the Heartland Heartland dispatch services.
Uh-huh.
And so that's been a complication, but now it works very, very well.
So tell me when you first got involved in the fire district.
Let's see, that would be 1987 about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was involved off and on as president of the board. The board is elected.
Yeah.
And we have only 3 members of the board. And they often talk about, let's get 5 members. But we decided, you know what? Maybe smaller and closer to the people we serve is better than trying to be a big and join Cal Fire, which, by the way, Spring Valley did do that.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up filing bankruptcy and merged into Cal Fire, and then realized this was a big mistake. Now we're just part of a big bureaucracy, and they don't really care about us in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to be our own district. So they had to undo all of what they'd done for a number of years. And we always felt, we did the right thing by not getting merged up with National City or Chula Vista or San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been, and we had a...
So you're a fire, what is it? There's 3 of them on the fire board, right?
Yes.
And so how long are you on the fire board?
21 years. And in that time, we moved from there next to Jack in the Box and built a new fire station. We had to acquire that property from the county of San Diego.
Was there anything there before?
That whole field was a big celery farm.
Oh.
And the dirt was bad because there was a big landslide up Acacia Avenue, and all that mud came down and filled up that little valley there. So the celery didn't grow well anymore. And the fire district bought a little house. It was a farmhouse there. And then when I got involved, we decided, look, if we can declare, and the county had a little road department, let's buy that property from the road department if they'll sell it to us. We have the little house, and we operated out of there for a while until we got our new design and all the new stuff and built that fire station and firehouse. And that opened in the early 90s.
Yeah, 92. September of 92, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then the time capsule, I think, was in December.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that 92. Makes sense.
And then it was open in 2022.
Yeah.
Now it's in our collection.
Oh, good.
Which is, I was processing that yesterday.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, the time capsule.
That's great.
So what do you feel like is the difference you made on the fire on the fire board in the years you were there? What do you feel like changed, and how did you guide the fire board?
We had kind of a cantankerous attitude on the fire department. They were non-support of the chief and disgruntled employees, and we had a district secretary who was really kind of on opposite sides from the chief. And it was just a difficult political problem and an employee problem. There are only 14 actually emergency service personnel, and then the rest are administrative.
Yeah.
So I had a big hand in keeping us small and related, and we had a benefit fee that was going to expire. So I helped organize.
Is that like part of the taxes, or what is the benefit fee?
It's a fee that we need to generate money to build a new fire station. So we're going to charge everybody an extra amount, and generally it was a low amount.
It comes out of your property tax.
It's in the tax bill.
It's assessed at the same time. Yeah.
At the same time.
Okay.
And it was going to sunset. So I realized that, as this community grows, we didn't have any ambulances. And our ambulance used to come from Chula Vista or Lemon Grove, actually.
Yeah, that's far.
And so we said, look, let's see if we can get the community to support continuing the benefit fee. And it continues to this day. So.
And you had a hand in that.
Yes. And it was an effort. The firefighters were on board with it. And the chief, we ended up, a couple of the difficult to be with employees retired for various reasons. And we've had a wonderful, all 3 or 4 of the last chiefs, 3 of the last chiefs are homegrown. They started here as firefighters and worked their way up, became engineers and captains, and eventually chief.
Yeah.
And we thought that was important. We never once advertised outside who wants to come to Bonita and be the chief. So, and I was strongly of that opinion.
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful relationship with the firefighters union. There's been some times, but it's been a great relationship.
The employees have changed and there's more unity, you feel like, than when you first started in the fire department?
Yeah, absolutely. But that all got settled in the first 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
The next 16 years was great.
Yeah.
So what else?
So tell me, you were involved in as a fire district, but you were also involved with Barb in the museum and the historical society. And tell me about that. How long you been involved? Now, I guess it was the Bonita Professional Association. Were you ever involved in that before?
Yes, we were very involved. Actually, in the early days, they used to have the Bonita Fest program, and it was a big deal parade.
Yeah, and you were marshals one year. I've seen pictures.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you remember what year? I have to look it up.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Tell me about Bonita Fest.
That's
a big deal for me. I'm doing a Bonita Fest exhibit this year, and I have a huge collection. I've got a process.
So there were people that were key in all of that.
So it was the Bonita Professional Association that started the Bonita Fest.
Exactly. And the names of those folks escape me right now, but they were wonderful, dedicated, mostly Chamber of Commerce type of people, and all had little businesses basically. It wasn't any really big business. Some of the banks eventually put their staff on the Bonita Fest.
Yeah.
Part of that professional association. And we had our own newspaper in those days, the Bonita Post.
Yep, we have some copies of that.
And so it was a community effort, and they, as we grew and we got involved with having the benefit fees and getting the fire station built and all that kind of stuff, Supervisor Cox came to me and said, "Hey, would you help us? We want to build a library." And at that time, the library had moved into Bonnie Brace Center,
I remember it was there.
where we were the landlords, basically. And now they wanted their own place. And so Supervisor Cox said, "Hey, if you'll help us, because of the Cox connections to Chula Vista, I think it's the only place in the state where the community, we're not a city. Bonita's not a city.
Yeah.
Actually, Chula Vista annexed the heart of the Bonita District Fire District along Bonita Road. They came out Bonita Road and just annexed that commercial property. And it's still to this day in the city limits of Chula Vista. But when we opposed that. And so now Supervisor Cox and I got to be friends. He said, "Help us raise the money."
Yeah.
And you know people and all that. So, okay. And we did. Barbara was a big hand of that.
Yeah.
And still is. And the people that are invited to this program really are the people who help make that happen. And the city of Chula Vista leased the land to the county of San Diego. And so the library and the safety center and the museum are on city of Chula Vista land, and they pay rent to the city of Chula Vista, but not
a lot.
rent, no.
Yeah.
It's token rent.
Yeah.
But it's been a wonderful partnership.
Yeah.
But to build the fire station, to build a museum, we needed Chula Vista permit.
So tell me, what was it? Greg Cox's idea to work with the county to get this complex built? Was it his? He's the one who came up with the idea.
And that's why it's Cox Community Center.
Yeah.
I wanted to name it that from the beginning.
Oh, and it was renamed fairly recently, like during COVID. Or
it
something.
was unnamed. The whole time, and partly because Greg and Cheryl didn't want that public stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other supervisors in those days had various programs and projects named after them. But the Coxes didn't want that.
Yeah.
But when he retired, he didn't have all that say about it. So it became a Cox Community Center.
Yeah.
And that community room. And our street paving and our traffic signals. All of that wouldn't have been here without the Coxes.
Yeah.
They just been.
So it was his idea. He could really see the benefit of that. And having the safety center and the museum and the library, I think, is really fabulous.
And as I said, when we built the fire station, 10,000 square feet, we don't need 10,000 square feet in Bonita. We're just a small. I said, yeah, but we don't have any ambulances.
Yeah.
So we leased the old fire station to the ambulance service, and they had a supervisor and a training, they call them cars, ambulance, in that building. Then we built enough room and enough housing space to have now 2 ambulances operate out of that fire station. So our response times are
I bet they're great.
Some of the best.
Yeah.
And if we were part of Cal Fire or something, none of that would have happened. So I don't think. So anyway.
So tell me more about Greg Cox came to you, and the county put up a certain amount of money, and then he asked a certain money to be raised. Is that right?
Yes, he needed community money. So we did all the things that communities do: sold bricks and advertising, and named the rooms and that kind of stuff, and generated money. And
so by that time, you had lived here 30 years, right? And so the fact that you and Barb had so many connections and such deep roots with people who were influential, that seemed very key to raising that money.
It was. And everybody was generous.
Yeah.
I never heard no. I never heard it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What else do you know?
So tell me about the museum being built. You raised the money, and then did the county take it over, or?
No, it was a county project from the beginning, and the county took requests for
For
proposals
Yeah.
for design and then for construction.
Mm-hmm.
And they chose the architects that they chose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we,
Yeah.
I was very disappointed. They made me a nice paper model
Uh-huh.
of the building, but it didn't have that Western flair that I was wanting. But we ended up, the county supervised all of that.
Yeah.
Got the county permits, but city permits in the city, even though the county was applying to the city for permits for their building. And it got done.
It's such an interesting intersection of Chula Vista and the county, I think, right there in that little piece of land.
It's the only place in the whole state that Greg ever knew about, and he was president of the Board of Supervisors Association nationally.
Yeah.
And so he was connected in this state.
Yeah.
And he says this is the only place that he knows where there's safety center, because our police service, most of the county is unincorporated. So we can't call the city of Chula Vista, who be right there on Bonita Road.
Yeah.
No, you have to call the sheriff. Well, the closest sheriff was in Lemon Grove or in Imperial Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, what if we had a place where they have a desk and a computer and a phone and a bathroom and a coffee pot?
Yeah.
And have a presence.
Yeah.
And they are in and out of there a lot.
Yeah, they are.
But it's the only place in the state that shares. Bonita Road is technically a state highway, so that's the highway patrol. The main part of the street is City of Chula Vista Police Department. And National City also encroaches into Bonita, or the other way around.
Yeah.
And so, well, what's your address? We have to figure out who we're supposed to call.
Yeah.
So this was a wonderful cooperative effort from everybody involved.
So the safety center is those three different public safety departments, right? It's the county sheriff and the state highway patrol, and then one other
City
one.
of Chula Vista.
City of Chula Vista. Yeah. Greg told me that once.
Yeah.
And so, as far as what do you think, just a couple last questions kind of wrap up, unless you have anything else you want to add. Do you want to add anything about your work in Bonita? What else do you want to talk about?
I'll think of it tonight about 2 a.m.
And then you can
why didn't I tell
you can
him
send
that?
me an email. So what do you think makes Bonita different from other communities? What do you think makes us distinct?
I'm not sure that, except for the ruralness of it, that it's much different. But we lived in Rancho Santa Fe a while, and they're very strictly controlled by their covenant.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, wonderful place, and those people love it. And now I know several families who are doing horse activities in Rancho Santa Fe because they used to live here. Now they live around different points of California, in San Diego area, but they go there for horseback, and that was a wonderful community.
Yeah.
And I think there's a number of neighborhoods that are great. Poway is another place that was similar. It was very rural, and now all of a sudden it's urbanized. But it's just, I guess, part of the growing up.
Yeah. What advice would you have for the next generation of community leaders in Bonita? I feel like you and Barb are really leaders in lots of different ways. And what advice would you have as you kind of pass that baton on to the next generation of influencers and leaders in Bonita?
One thing I think is important is the history. And so many young people don't know the sacrifices that it took to get where we are, and how much people worked hard to make it. And don't let it just figure that, well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does matter. And I think people that have those kind of roots make good citizens, and their kids become good citizens. And if you don't know, and you just always just live basically buried in civilization, and I don't know. I can't get that far with it all, but there's a lot to be said about keeping nature and history and family together.